Welcome to the podcast that explores mysterious disappearances, bizarre worldly occurrences, strange phenomenon, and basically everything that's weird. Welcome to the podcast, everything that's weird. We're your hosts, Brandon and Anthony, and our researcher, Mario. And tonight, we're going back to Denali.
Maybe with a little more information than the Blink 182 guy.
So this is the subject we did earlier. So if you're saying you already did this, yes, I know, we know. But there's been more information that has come to light, and we said it actually, I think, that we wanted to revisit this one. We're talking about the dark or Black Pyramid in Alaska. So just to bring everybody right back up to speed, the guy, is it Tom DeLonge?
Yeah.
Okay. The Tom DeLonge, who is part of Blink 182, they went on hiatus. They all decided to take a break from being Blink 182. And one of the other guys joined other bands or had families. He decided
they didn't do shit.
He's like, I'm going to find out about aliens, which I respect that. I do. He funneled his resources into meeting people, talking to people, and he ended up on some podcast. And somebody said to him, what's the weirdest thing you've ever heard? And he said, well, there's this dark pyramid in the middle of Alaska right by Denali, and they don't know what it does, and it's an energy source, and they think it streams consciousness. And the guy is like, what? Yeah. All right, so that's where we left off last time. Since then, a lot of things have come to light. A lot of people have come out. There's her name's
Linda Moulton Howe,
and she was big on a show called Coast to Coast. So I know Coast to Coast. It was big out west, and then when we had a bar, I used to close, and Coast to Coast was the only thing on when I would drive home. So
I admittedly had never heard of it until our time traveler episode, the one with the guy that made the time traveling device.
So Coast to Coast was a guy named Art Bell that started it. It was based out of the Southwest United States, and it really hit a niche, especially for that area. That area was really ripe with the extraterrestrial highways there, Area 51's there. You got one thing about, if you don't live in LA or Las Vegas and you live right outside, if you look at the stars, holy shit, you can see galaxies. Like without light pollution is the thing. What it does is it creates like a light bubble above the area that you live in, and it essentially blinds you from seeing the stars. But like if you go out into the desert,
covered that on the moon landing one, remember?
Yeah, right. You can see a lot. So admittedly, people that live in remote places in the
when
desert,
I was in Arizona, it was like that.
Right, you can see fucking everything, right? And so people really, I don't want to say it's like they're tripped out by the galaxy or whatever, or they see more than anybody else or anything like that. I'm just saying more people responded to this guy and his late night radio show, and it was a hit. It's a hit, right? And he's had several hoaxes and several unexplained things. Like Bob Lazar has been on there. There's also a guy that said he landed in Area 51 in a small Cessna, and wasn't true. So there's all kinds of like kind of like the Weekly World News, right? Some of it's real, some of it's fake, right? Okay, okay. But this kind of thing was kind of like a recent development. When I say recent, I say like 90s to now, and it was essentially discovered, and this has been a little bit of a debate of how it was discovered. But what's the guy's name? What's the guy's name?
Douglas,
that was in the military?
Douglas Muchler.
Okay, so Muchler is from Ohio, am I right?
Cincinnati.
Okay, fucking Cincy, go Bengals. So he's from Cincinnati. He gets stationed in Alaska, which to me in the military sounds funny. Like, really, right. You'll be peeling potatoes in Alaska,
in Siberia,
right?
Yeah,
right. So he gets stationed in Alaska, and he is, he's the military guy. So he's
counterterrorism and espionage.
So at the time, high Cold War, he wants to know the lay of the land. He wants to know everything about.
He don't know anything about where he's at.
He wants to know what's up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So first thing he finds out is that there's this blank spot on the map.
Yeah,
and he's like, well, "That's weird. Like, why is there a blank spot?"
Yeah,
and I don't know if I'm getting my stories.
It's labeled. It says area not surveyed yet, or
right,
2 days.
Right, exactly. And he's like, everything's been surveyed. What are we talking about? And I may be getting my stories mixed up, but he ends up getting like literally a shoestring, right? Because this is pre-GPS. Mm-hmm. Finding out like the coordinates of where it's at. And then there's a Chinese nuclear bomb.
Yeah, it's like 3 years later after he sees that map. It's like 3 years later, he said, according to him, him and a couple dozen other Army people were sitting there watching TV when somebody said quiet, and they turned the TV up, and the news broadcast for the 6 o'clock news was
Chinese nuclear test.
The Chinese nuclear test had gone off, and it had revealed through seismology a giant pyramid underground in Alaska. This is what he said they reported on the news.
So him and like 40 guys see this, right?
Right.
And he's like, okay, all right, fine. So he's like, that happened. He's like, and he goes back and he's like, yeah, that's the area. That's not like, it's not.
He's going to record. He wants to record. He's going to record the 11 o'clock news because they're going to do the story again at 11 o'clock. So
they go to do it.
Yeah.
He goes to record it. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So he's like, what the fuck? So he goes to the local news.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Like, I don't know what local news in Alaska in 1990s like, but it makes me laugh. So like,
I'm going to drive down there.
He goes.
Who says that?
And the producer's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, you do know what I'm talking about. You aired it at 5, or 6 or whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
You aired it, and now you didn't play at 11. So he's like, no, I don't know, wrong. And so he's like, that's weird. So he starts to walk out, and this apparently a young kid is like I guess I don't know if he's an intern or he's like he's like, hey, psst, come here. That did happen. And some men in black showed up, confiscated all the tapes, and said we are not supposed to report on that ever again.
Right.
So he's like, well, that's fucking weird. So he goes back to his guys, the 40 guys that watched it with him, and they're like, no, we fucking saw it, right?
Yeah, we all saw it. And then he gets transferred to Fort Meade at some point, which is the home of the NSA.
Right.
So,
but then he ends up back there, right?
He's in Fort Meade in the NSA. Could have been working for him. Who knows? but he's got all the NSA information, so he decides he's going to look it up.
Right, you're right. He starts looking at places in
like with his
Alaska.
credentials and clearance and shit. He walked into the archive guy and just kind of was like, "Hey, I'm looking for some details, some archaeological site maps for Alaska." And the guy's like, "Here, it's right here on this shelf in this row in this category." And he goes back there, he grabs it, he goes to sit down with the shit.
And he's visited again, right?
Hey, Men in Black come in again.
And they're like, "We know what you're looking for."
Yeah.
And he's like, "What? What are you talking about?" "I don't know." "Yeah, you do." "We know exactly what you're looking for." But he ends up back there, right? Am I wrong?
What? Back up in Alaska? No.
Yeah. All right. Well, who ends up going in the elevator?
Okay, so his name is Marty Johnson. He was a Navy engineer, and he gets recruited to get sent to Alaska. And he's like excited about it. This is like real cloak and dagger kind of thing, because they're like, it's a top secret project, which isn't anything too new to him because he was a Navy engineer. So he did a lot of top secret.
Sure. Absolutely.
And he just brilliant guy, like could like make anything, you know, he's a brilliant guy. So they take him to Alaska, this small town. They put him on this white bus. He said it was like a white school bus. All the windows are blacked out. There's other scientists and engineers get on the bus, and they ride on this bus for hours. And eventually they stop, and when they get out, they're like in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, just tundra and snow everywhere you look. They're like, it's so bright and white they can't even see.
But what they do see is like a cement shack. Like
a little shed. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And there's military guys there.
Mm-hmm.
And they go up, and the
Shittiest
door
post
opens.
Ever.
Right. Yeah. Right. Oh, dude, could you imagine?
Guard the door in Alaska.
That's another one of those. Yeah. You'll be guarding the door in Alaska.
I would walk by. I'm like, what did you do?
Right. So he goes. He's like, okay, this is weird, but he goes into an elevator.
Yeah.
And it just drops him, and he's like, this is going on for a long time. Like, the elevator.
He was like daydreaming, like it was going on so long. He kind of came to, like, what? Wait, we've been still going down.
Right. And then when they get down there, there's a dark pyramid. Yeah. And what they said was it was buried years ago by the Ice Age. So it's been there for a long time.
Yeah, and I love that part of Marty's story is that it all made sense to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, like he was like, I know it's something crazy. And they step off the elevator, and there's this gigantic, like bigger than the pyramid in Egypt.
And he knew like down to the degrees of the angle of the pyramid.
Yeah, that was like a really important part. It was 40
and that's
degrees.
That's what they said. Like, I don't know why that's important, but that's important. But he also knew the dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 550 feet?
Something like that, yeah. It was 750 feet underground or something like that, but it was.
And then it was 550 feet wide.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because that's like a football field and 2/3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Almost 2 football fields wide.
Yeah, and it's black, and the stones are like smooth.
And he said they think it's made of stone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So all right. So fuck. What do you even do with this? All right. So okay.
Okay, and then I got another story about it.
Go ahead.
There's a former military guy, Lee Pearson.
Yes.
And he's trading war stories with this active military guy. And he sees he's got an itch he needs to scratch. So he says, hey, man, you want to help me with this supply run? It's going to be kind of crazy, and we're going to be flying into the Alaskan Triangle. And he's like, hell yeah, you know? So they get on the helicopter, and after they ride for a while, the dude stops, and he's like, hey, man, listen, when here in a little bit, everything's going to go crazy. All my alarms are going to go off. The systems are going to shut down. Just be cool. Everything's fine. It's completely normal. And like, that's some crazy shit to hear, right?
I always think of what's his name, Crash Pad from DuckTales.
Yeah,
right. Okay.
Don't worry.
Launchpad. Okay. Okay.
But so they go in, and all that shit happens. Everything shuts down, and the whole thing goes dark. But the helicopter's still running. Like, it didn't affect the motor. You know what I mean? Like, the helicopter still functions. It's just all his instruments are down and everything. And they get to this place where they sit down and they refuel them. These guys come out and refuel them, and he starts looking around. Lee starts looking around, and he goes, everywhere he looks, there's soldiers, and they all have their guns pointed at them. And there was even like a mounted 50 cal, and they had that pointed at them too, and there was just like razor wire everywhere. They had like supply boxes out, and he said it was crazy because like he was like, he looked over at the pilot, and he looked at him, and he gave him that, this is normal, don't worry about it. And
so we'll get into that. We'll revisit that.
The point of that story is that after he comes out, after they leave, they go out, they do the whole shit shuts down, and then finally their instruments come back on, and he goes, "What the hell was that, man?" And the guy wouldn't talk to him. He looked at him and he shushed him with his finger, and he pointed at his headset and said, like, they're listening. Shh, don't say anything. And it wasn't until later when they get back at the bar, and he tells him the story of a black pyramid that they're guarding that's underground. And so it has to do with aliens.
So the consensus is that it is this energy source.
Yes.
That we really don't know how to harness.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, somebody says, well, like, how much energy is it? And this is that Hal lady. She says she was told it's enough to power the whole country.
Yeah.
Okay. But we don't have control over it.
Yeah.
And it is basically a gas station for UFOs.
Yeah.
It's where UFOs come, gather energy to do their thing.
Well, now, if you think about it, when Douglas Mutchler, when he was saying he was going through those records and the Men in Black visited him in that archive up where the NSA was at Fort Meade, he said that they kind of like slipped up when he was like, why can't I look at this? It's just archaeological information. And he's like, we know what you're looking for. And he goes, and he said, they don't want you messing around with them. They just want to be left alone. And it's like, who the fuck are they? You don't speak about the military as they. Yeah.
I hope there's an alien fight club. That'd be awesome. All right.
Right.
So let's get into some facts. Okay, so let's talk facts. Let's marinate this a little bit. Okay, first of all, Mario.
Yeah.
How many places on Earth? Let's just go with continents, countries, whatever you found out. How many places are there pyramids?
All the inhabited continents, there's pyramids.
Okay. And it's even been said on Antarctica.
Right. Don't leave Antarctica out. You never know.
That there's pyramids and listen, I've looked at this. I've seen this while researching our podcast. I've seen videos about China where they have the same origin to the stars as Egypt, and it all has to do with Orion, which I don't know what that means. Whatever. But like Bulgaria,
Sudan has the most.
Okay.
Sudan
right?
has over 250. Egypt has over 100. Mexico has
Right.
more than
Mexico.
20. There's dozens in the Middle East and China. China doesn't disclose a lot of theirs. I don't know if it's for tourist reasons or.
So China all the time says, no, they're just hills. And you're like, dude, bro, that's a
China
fucking
doesn't
pyramid.
disclose a lot of shit, bro.
Right.
No, that's a COVID pyramid. I mean, what? No, I know. But I think it's fair to say that there's pyramids everywhere, and we are going to do. I think it's probably either our next episode is whether there's an advanced civilization that easily lived before us. But the point is that there's these crazy structures that are built and nobody knows how they're built. So like they think the Sphinx never had that face. They think the Sphinx actually had another face. And it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because the head doesn't look appropriate.
It's not proportionate at all. And they have.
It looks newer. I mean, I know they did a lot of repair on it, but still.
But if you look at where the palls go out, there's a lot of people think that that was actually like filled with water, and they could tell because of the way the stones are eroded in a certain way. Yeah. Whether it's like a stagnant pond or whatever, there's like it definitely seems like there's a water level, right?
It would look cooler.
It would look way cooler, right? And then you get to like even Antarctica, it kind of has the like where they pick out that there's pyramids. It has the same kind of origin in Antarctica of the pyramids that are in Giza, right?
Yeah.
And then you go to like Mario and I. What was that book called, Mario?
The Lost Star of Myth and Time.
Okay, The Lost Star of Myth and Time. So the Lost Star of Myth and Time has to do with archaeology and all these anomalies and how the present timeline doesn't match up to what's actually out there, right? And archaeologists get really pissed about anomalies. And when I say anomalies, I mean like there was a mini sledgehammer found in coal in West Virginia that should have been, 1,000,000 years old. There's a watch that was found in something that's like 80,000 years old that shouldn't be there. Like things that don't belong all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a big problem. That's a big problem with and I had a roommate and he was high most of the time, but he made a lot of sense. He would say, we don't know shit about the earth. we don't know anything. We're constantly learning. And the older I get, the more I always think about that because he's right. They keep pushing the timeline back of how long we've been here. How long, 30 years ago.
It's the Nate Bargatze bit where he's like they get shit wrong, and he's like, well, who got fired over that one? You're first it's a million years old, now it's 1 billion years old. That's a lot of time. Who got fired over that one?
Did you ever see him on SNL?
Yeah.
He's like, we're gonna start a great nation, and they're like, what's gonna happen to this great nation? He's like, we're gonna have a ruler that has inches and feet. And they're like, why not centimeters? like the rest of the world, it's like we don't do that.
It's like, but we're going to measure our football in yards. They're like, what's football? It's a game you play with your hands.
You use your feet sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. It's true, though. It is absolutely true. Like, they keep pushing the timeline back of, like, how old people are to, you know, like, the narrative that is, like, evolution. And, you know, our brother-in-law, Mario, he said something that blew my fucking mind. Because I was always like, yeah, evolution. It's fucking... Why would anybody not think there's evolution? And he's like, show me the monkey that said I'm gonna stay in the tree. And I'm like, God damn it, dude. You know, it really messed me up because I'm like, yeah, right? Why is there not, like, why would somebody decide not to move forward? Right?
Yeah.
Like if that's what it is, if that's what evolution is.
I heard a quote once on a show. What was that show called? I can't remember what it was called. But he was talking about the age-old question of what came first, the chicken or the egg.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, the chicken, because whatever laid he's like, it was the egg came first, not the chicken, because whatever laid it wasn't a chicken.
Okay, fine.
And I was like,
All right.
okay, all right.
So I had chickens.
Yeah.
Chickens lay eggs every day. That's what they do. They lay eggs. Now, if you have a rooster and the hen lays the egg, the rooster is having sex with all the hens, right? Right? It's time.
I was gonna say something.
Who's having sex with the chicken? But like, yeah, I agree. I know it's weird, but like something, and I think they're still like debating that this is still like a debate.
Yeah.
Because I had this argument with my daughter. She's like 8. And I said, well, you know, they say what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And she's like, well, the chicken, because it lays the egg. And I said, oh, really? Well, how did it become a chicken? And it fucked her up. She's still, I see her in bed, like, making notes and drawing diagrams. It really messed her up. I shouldn't have
up on a cork board.
Right. I shouldn't have done that to her. It really was unfair on my part. But like, yeah, this is really true. Like, okay, if there is evolution, then okay, none of this is important. However, it kind of seems like it does kind of seem like that our evolution as humans is just like, you know,
I feel like if somebody left the lid off the petri dish and abandoned the lab.
I agree.
Feels like that sometimes.
It does. And like in other times, like the Romans built roads that they still use now. And I was just saying this the other night. But like our major like highway has to be repaired every 2 years. Yeah. So like, all right, why not do it like the Romans used a certain? We know what kind of concrete they used. Yeah. And I know it's cobblestone or whatever.
It's rough.
Right, it's rough. But some of those roads are still used. So, and I know there's modern technology.
To be fair, though, 80,000-pound fucking semis ain't driving over them every 5 seconds.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, there's like a guy on YouTube.
They couldn't lay down like a 3-lane highway in a couple weeks. You know what I mean?
There's a guy on YouTube that has ancient technology and that was lost. And he's
Mhm.
in Florida, and he moves these giant stones that weigh several tons, right? With like a pebble and a 2x4. Right? You know what I mean? And I get that too.
It's like
I
that
do.
the coral place in Florida or whatever.
Absolutely.
The guy
I do
moved it
get
all
that.
with like a triangle shaped tripod thingy.
I get that. However, when you get to like Giza, like what he did is stuff that like, you know, it's 10 feet to 20 feet tall.
Mhm.
When you get to Giza and like actually like the logistics of the construction to make that happen,
Mhm.
people are at a loss.
Yeah.
Like they really are. Like
It's another Nate Bargatze joke.
Right.
He's like, even with today's technology, we would have trouble building that. And he was like, a triangle? We couldn't build a triangle? I think we can build a triangle.
But the thing is, it comes from a distant place. Yeah, I think that's the whole idea. So,
Well, it
regardless,
had an outer shell to it too, which
let's
is
just
gone now. So,
but let's go back to this. Okay, this is in Egypt. This is Alaska.
yeah, it was just two completely different environments. These
Absolutely.
two could be the same age, and one looked like they were describing it when they got out, where it was like smooth, shiny, black.
Not to
pyramid.
mention that it's underground.
That's what. Yeah, it's completely protected, and it's cold, and it's not. And it's dry.
So there's a lot of theory that the pyramids are energy sources,
Mm-hmm.
and that's because of the Baghdad battery.
Yeah.
So the Baghdad battery is a little clay pot that has a copper coil, and it's believed that they used pig stomach acid to make a battery to harness power that is literally a Duracell, right? All right.
Yeah, and the Baghdad batteries are real. It's a very real thing.
Absolutely. And the inscription in the pyramids, it leads everybody to believe that the pyramids are an energy source, and that's what they were.
So there's been a lot of talk about that, actually, where people have shown how, with all its shafts and everything, how it could be pull energy from the quantum realm, or the quantum energy, like quantum energy field.
And that's what that's okay. So a lot of the problems with all the tunnels and shit like that is that if they had fire, they would smoke themselves out.
Yeah.
And that's like a problem. That's like a problem with all these like caverns and stuff. Like how would they have light? Because you can't just have a torch. It's not The Mummy with Brendan Fraser.
It would have to be engineered into
absolutely.
so
There'd
precise
have to be
that you would build from the bottom up and always have light from
absolutely
above.
There had to be exhaust. So when they get to this dark pyramid in Alaska, what they were saying was that at the end of the day, the army has known about it for a very long time, is what they said. And I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means since we purchased Alaska in 1849, or like since like the Cold War started and World War II or whatever. Okay, but at some point, they don't know what it is. They don't know how to control it, and they don't know what to do with it. So all they do is watch it. And what they think is that it's basically a shell station for UFOs.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into what we think. Okay. You want to go first?
Um,
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
We did this last time. I went back and listened, and then now we're doing it this time. I kind of think this exists. I think the world's weird. Like, you know what really blew my mind? Joe Rogan said one time in his stand-up, he's like, I think the Egyptians got to Egypt.
Yeah.
And he said that when they got there, he's like, well, we made this for you guys. And I was like, oh, shit.
They were like, he was like, they got there and they just found the pyramids and they were like, hey, we built these.
And you know what? If I was a ruler in year one,
Yeah. Yep.
I would do the same fucking thing.
Yeah, we built this. This is our might.
And I would create a power structure like, yeah, this is how fucking powerful I am. Welcome. These are the pyramids. I wouldn't even know what it was. And I'm not dissing ancient man. I think so. As somebody that had zero. I lived in California where everything's like on a grid. Everything's on a grid. I live in a city, and they're like, "Hey, you're the super of these buildings or whatever." I would call plumbers, electricians, whatever. When I was out on my own in Indiana, and I had to figure out how to make things work.
Yeah.
Okay. I figured it out. It didn't take me long. And you can back me up on this, right? Because you have land.
Mm-hmm.
You have your house is it's not in a subdivision, right? And there's things that people don't understand, like a septic system, or like there's just things that, like, if you're not in it, you don't understand, right?
Yeah, you never had to say if it's brown, flush it down.
Absolutely. Or like I remember the first time I went to flush my toilet and it bubbled up.
Yeah.
And I called a septic guy, and he's like, yeah, I'll be right out. He's like, hey man, look, this is what's happening. Your clean out is not getting to your thing. Something's stuck somewhere. And he's like, you can tell, because he pulled the clean out thing off. He's like, you can tell because you're running the water inside, it's not running down. Something is holding it up. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense, right?
Yeah. So
me and him, he's like, I got this thing I can use. It basically looks like an out of control car wash.
Yeah.
He takes this thing, this hose that sprays 360 degrees, hard pressure, right? He starts sending it in. I'm like, where's it going? He's like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Me and you will figure it out, right? Like, so me and him are like intense, right? And all of a sudden he's like, I hit it. And it's like stopping. He can't get the hose to go any farther. And all of a sudden he broke through and he's like, F yeah. And he fucking pulled it out. And that thing just everything went. And I'm like, oh my God. And that was like, okay, that was one tiny little part of living at that house.
Yeah.
Everything that goes on in that house has a system or a way that you do something. And that has to be with every civilization. So the reason I say that is because, you know, people, they get comfortable and you don't know what things are. You take things for granted, and I think, this Mario, how many people live in McGrath, Alaska?
There's 317.
Okay, so McGrath, Alaska is exactly where this is located. They have a fence, and everybody's like, why is that fence there? Like, they do. The people who live there are like, it's weird that there's a fence, right? Okay, so, like, you learn to live around certain things, but you're also in Alaska. You're worried about keeping your house warm and having enough groceries and whatever. Okay.
I got a friend that became a park ranger up in Alaska, and she said the reason she doesn't lock her doors, she's like, she stopped locking her doors because one night her hands were so cold she couldn't hold the key to stick it in the door lock, and she kept dropping the key, and she spent hours trying to get into her door. So she said, I don't lock my door anymore in Alaska.
Right. It's environment. Right.
Yeah.
So,
and they all have outhouses.
Is it weird that this exists there? No, not at all. Is it weird that it's a thing? Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Do I think that the pyramids have some sort of power source? It'd be weird if they didn't. Did you ever see that Jason Bateman movie with who's the Deadpool guy? Ryan Reynolds?
Yeah.
Where they pee in the fountain and they switch?
Yeah.
And he's like, would it be weird if I said I missed your penis? And he said, it'd be weird if you didn't. Right? So like, it's weird that like all this alien stuff happens around pyramids, and it doesn't.
That town has a lot of like weird sightings too, right?
Absolutely. And it happens all over the world. So like, is it like a gas station? I don't know. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Like, it's weird that there's just pyramids. Like, why aren't they cubes?
Yeah.
And like, okay. In Costa Rica, there's orbs. There's spheres all over the island. Okay. Why isn't it spheres? It's because obviously, pyramids hold some kind of power source to whether, and I think this, when I was researching this, somebody said this, that the guy that replicated the pyramid of Alaska, he was able to like charge his entire farm and create a power source. Okay,
that was Marty Johnson.
Okay, so
he went home after he worked on that project where they had him working on trying to discover what the pyramid was. So that's why that 48-degree angle came into play. He went back and he like replicated it, and apparently it was drawing energy, quantum energy, and it was enough to power their whole entire farm. So they had several outbuildings and shit.
So we've never done Tesla, but there's like a famous picture of Nikola Tesla where he figured out how to pull energy right out of the air.
Yeah.
It's basically static electricity, right? So, okay, he figured out how to pull it right out of the air. Well, maybe, we have an abundance, and I'm not even gonna say maybe. We do. We have abundance of energy, and this is just like one of those things. Like, the people that are in the know keep the technology down so that other people can't, profit off it, basically, or they were going to lose money because of it. And I think what this is probably something that's super real. And I think probably Egypt, probably China, it's probably all real. And either one of two things: we don't understand how to make it work, or we understand it and it's not profitable. So I think I'm going to give us the benefit of the doubt and say we don't understand how it works. And that would make a lot more sense because they know it gives off everything I've read and watched and whatever. They know it gives off energy. They just don't understand why it works and how it works. So, is it real? Absolutely. It's absolutely real. You do not put a fence around an area, and it's Fernald. It's where we grew up. You do not put a fence around an area unless there's something that's for real that is detrimental to national security, and you do not have a people watching that place unless you're studying it. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And if it is like just a shell station for UFOs, okay, and somebody said it's because we work for them, they don't work for us. That makes a lot of sense too. Well, I mean, if it's this power source and I don't know, we can't do anything about it, then
So
why would you not?
You think it's real and you think it's powering alien ships?
Why is it still there? Why is it still there? Why would people, in the 90s? Fine. Okay, I'll give you that the Pyramid of Giza probably isn't a power source anymore. And, in Mexico, it's Tenochtitlan. Is that right? All those. I'll give you all that. Fine. Okay, but this one. Some guy literally went underground. And they know that it has an electrical source. I mean, if it was me and I was an alien, right? I would set up some power stations. If they're they're so smart, they get here. Well, get here. What are they doing? All right, yeah, maybe they got here and set up some shell stations. I mean, that makes sense to me. I would set up a refill, right? Especially if you're manipulating our DNA and all that, everything that they say about aliens, right? And believe me, I'm the first one that's go aliens. but the only thing that makes me have any kind of reservation is that the government's saying, yeah, there's aliens. That's the only problem I have. If it wasn't for the government saying, yeah, there's aliens, I'd be yeah, I'm on board. But because the government's saying there's aliens, I'm yeah, maybe there's not. Maybe they're fucking me. and it makes a lot of sense. So if I'm just going to throw it out there, what I believe, it's a gas station for aliens. I think it exists. There's a lot of weird stuff out there. And especially in very remote places, this is a very weird thing for several people to talk about that it exists, including the guy from Blink-182.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, your turn.
All right. I mean, it's a nice story, but there's not really a lot that backs it up. I mean, most of the stuff that we covered it's kind of shaky at best. The Lee Pearson story and the Marty Johnson story were both told by their sons.
There is a fenced off area.
There is I'm getting to that because I think that might be the only thing that's even solidly close to evidence. Because Muchler's story is like, it's kind of one of those deals where we talked about Bob Lazar and how consistent he was, and you get that Muchler isn't as consistent with his story, and he mixed dates up, and like when he said the nuclear test happened, it wasn't that China didn't do one then.
Okay, you're right. I heard about that. I did hear. You're right about that.
And then you got like the Linda Moulton Howe investigating, and she like did all her homework and everything.
She's also like
she's pretty biased.
She's been known to be a little bit. You're right. I'm helping you out here.
Yeah.
You're right. She's been known to be a little bit over the top and maybe not as truthful. So okay.
So and I think once the story starts, you're either gonna get people that are like, yeah, this happened, and they're being honest, or you're gonna get people that are like, I had some connection to this. I can spin it into something where I'm, important. And I feel like that kind of happened. It was like, like I said, the two stories were told by the sons. The one son tells this story about and I can get down with the whole beginning of it, where he says his dad was taken on this bus, this secret location. They went on this elevator. They go down underground. They see this secret thing, but then he goes on to tell this story about how his dad later on built his own replica pyramid. It was small, tiny, and it was making power. Where the fuck is that? Where'd it go? What'd you do with it?
Yeah, why don't you sell that?
Yeah, like where's that?
Why do you sell that at Tractor Supply?
So like it's like
because I would have bought that at Tractor Supply
right immediately.
I agree. All right, I'll give you that one. So, I would have bought that.
So in like, not that I don't believe that there could be a pyramid there, an ancient one. I mean, there's pyramids everywhere, like we said. So that part, I'm not having trouble with. The part that it's closely guarded military secrets, the part that I'm kind of having trouble with. It's like, it seems like an archaeological discovery at that point. So like you were saying, it would have to be like something active for them to protect it and keep it hidden, So it's kind of hard because it's like, it's got to go one way or the other, right? It's either got to be complete bullshit, or it's a fueling station for aliens, because why else would they cover it up and protect it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not necessarily a fuel station for aliens. It could be anything, but it's not nothing. It's not just sitting there silent and not doing anything,
Right.
It's not a piece of archaeology, or it would just been a discovery, at that point.
Okay.
It was just a bunch
I
of
get
stones.
that.
So,
I do get that.
Because anywhere else.
All right, so why is it fenced off?
Well,
because there is definitely a town called McGrath with a small population, and there was a lady that's like, they called it what did she call it? She didn't call it the no magnetic zone, but she's like, anything that flies over it, they have trouble with their instruments.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's
an anomaly.
That's kind of like a different story altogether. Is the Alaskan Triangle,
right? I get it.
And there's like, since like 1990, there's been like 16,000 people went missing, and that sounds like a wild number, and it is. It's a huge number, but it's also, the Alaskan Triangle is a gigantic area, and it is Alaska.
Okay, so I used to be crazy about the Bermuda Triangle until I started flying. And then when I started flying and I learned about pressure and lift and all that shit. Mm-hmm. And then I learned that there's parts of the Caribbean where methane is released, and it changes the pressure in the air, so your lift isn't the same, right?
Yeah, right.
So like because there may be methane released, it's not the same as oxygen and nitrogen,
Right.
and it causes you to drop. Well, that's a problem when you're flying, right?
Yeah.
Immediately when I heard that, I'm like, oh, well, that's what happens to all the airplanes. They fall out of the sky, and especially if they're flying too low, right? Yeah. Even if they're flying high and everything's going fine, when they have a dip because of methane or whatever, it causes complications. So yeah,
I'll give you that. From
I'll give you
ice. That could be part of it too. I mean,
I'll give you that.
So, but that's like it's almost like it's like a different story, like separate from. So there's instrument failure in a big chunk of Alaska. Apparently, it happens. So that part, it's like I don't know, and I don't know who put up the fence. Like, so did she say the military showed up and did it?
No, she just says weird. She hadn't lived there for a long time. She had lived there, like since the late '90s. And she's like, it's just weird that there's this fence here. We're not allowed to go. It's bizarre, and it is bizarre. But
fence could be anything. If they didn't do any digging or looking around or asking the right people the right questions, it could be a mining facility, and they don't want anybody get in there. It could be anything. It could be dangerous.
we lived by.
There could be weapons testing. There could be.
I remember driving with my dad by Fernald, which was a nuclear processing plant, and that was a whole little city, and you were not allowed to go there. You weren't.
Right.
He was like, there's cameras all over that place. And I'm like, seriously? He's like, oh yeah. He's like, you don't know what they do there. They make nuclear bombs there. And so, yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so for me, a fence could mean all kinds of things. It could mean anything. It doesn't automatically mean it's a way station. It's not like
so why?
Okay,
fine. Devil's advocate. Why so many people that say the same thing?
I think the story caught on, and like I said, if you got some connection or tie in any way, like the Marty Johnson story, his son realizes that his dad worked in Alaska on a secret project. Boom, he worked on the Black Pyramid. Lee Pearson hears the story about it, and he runs with it. Hey, my dad told me about this crazy ride he took where all their instruments failed. And that's not unheard of. We just talked about how instruments fail when you're flying in Alaska. So he could have told him this story about his instrument failure, and it was really weird. And he was doing a drop for military because, whatever. And he makes it what it was. So,
all right. Well,
I'm not saying that's what happened, and I'm not saying that it's not possible that it's there. I'm just saying that for me, this isn't enough to say, yeah, there's a pyramid under the ground and it's active.
I'm gonna help you out. Part of the problem is we did that walking with the tall whites.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like 30 years later or 20 something years later.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And it's always like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I get what you're saying, and that makes a lot more sense. Like, it's a lot more logical than what I'm saying. So
like Lee Pearson wasn't active military when he did this, so
right,
he wasn't under any restrictions to keep. Nobody made him sign any NDA or anything like that. He could have talked at any point. He didn't. His son did. So And I'm not saying that's the end all beat all, because that's just like one part of one story. So, but I can dismiss some of these as like, I think it's a weak attempt at being relevant. And
because I kind of feel like a lot of people know about this at this point.
yeah,
Like the fact that we're talking about it, we don't live anywhere near Alaska.
right.
All those people live in Alaska, and that is a problem as far as like looking up information. People are like, there's nothing there, dude.
You know how fucking craving for attention people in Alaska are?
Right, and when they say there's nothing there, there's nothing.
That ain't nothing. We catch
It ain't nothing. It's fucking
Nobody's coming
bullshit.
back. Nobody's coming back.
All right, so I think we're like undecided or doubtful.
I'm doubtful.
I'm undecided. I'm gonna leave a place open because I do think there's a bunch of weird stuff out there, and that's why we made this.
I mean, it sounds
podcast.
like a cool story.
It does.
I'd love to hear that there's like these pyramids that can power all kinds of shit, and that's what they used to do. And like I said, it was probably an advanced civilization back in the day, and it died out, and this wasn't even its home planet. This was just like this place that you go to, kind of like Florida.
But like, okay, real quick, we did a story about the Mount St. Helens with Bigfoot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that had any relevance was because tribes in that area said, "Oh yeah, dude, they exist.
Right.
They exist. They talk. There's a whole language, and yeah, like they've been here forever." And then that guy said that thing where he's like, I know what you're thinking. Like,
sounds crazy.
It sounds crazy, but they've been here forever. And it's something you're, in 30 years, you're going to be like, oh, wow, yeah, they do exist. And so it is weird to me. And this really fucks with me because I'm very anti-government. That the government's like, yeah, there's aliens, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that makes me immediately not want to believe in aliens.
I saw
right?
a skit where a guy was like, there's like a thug dude sitting out on the street, and a cop he come running up, and he goes, "Hey, did you see a guy go by in a red shirt?" He's like, "I ain't talking to you, pig." He's like, "I don't talk to the cops." He's like, I'm not trying to arrest him. I'm trying to help him out. Which way do you go?" And he was like, "I don't talk to pigs." And he's like, and then he said, "Don't do something," and the dude did it. And he was like, "Wait a minute." He's like, "Don't tell me about any crimes you saw today." Well, I saw JP go down and rob the market.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as he said, he was like, whatever he was like wanted him to do, he wouldn't do it.
But it is weird, like it is weird that like somebody like me who's like, yeah, aliens exist, all that shit. As soon as the government was like, yeah, there's aliens,
and
then
don't believe in aliens anymore.
Exactly. I swear to God, I swear to God, that's what happened to me. So like, the only part of me about this Alaska thing that's like, that's why I'm doubtful. Otherwise I'd be like, hell yeah, it exists, all that. But the biggest problem I have is that the government's like, yeah, there's aliens. I'm like, no, you're trying to fuck me on something. I don't know what it is, but you're trying to fuck me.
Yeah.
So like, right? So like, I don't know. I'm doubtful. And you're like, it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's where we're at.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist or it's doubtful.
Yeah.
Even though there's a fence.
There's a fence.
There is a fence.
They're keeping somebody out for some reason.
There's a reason they're keeping them out. I don't know why they're keeping them out.
It's probably fucking talking Bigfoots in there.
And it is bizarre that there's pyramids everywhere. That is bizarre.
It is.
Like, why pyramids?
Because it's a universal it's a universal fucking structure.
Okay.
Like
Why
an
not
arc.
why not cubes?
Like
or
an arch.
arcs? Or why not an arch?
Arches are everywhere.
Okay. Why
Harder to
not?
build.
Where?
They're harder to build. Pyramids the most stable. Even a cube would be harder to build.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why it was like it wasn't until recently we could even build over like 2 stories tall.
I mean, up until the Eiffel Tower, the Pyramid of Giza was the tallest structure on Earth.
Right.
Which Eiffel Tower is like 1800s.
Yeah, and it wasn't even livable.
Right.
Well,
except
While
there
you're
is an
talking about
apartment.
that, what no one's talking about that it's buried, but yet you can see it. So imagine the dome structure it would take for this thing underground to be able to see it.
And I never really understood that. They said it was because of the Ice Age, and I don't understand what that means.
Yeah. Like how
Is-
is it
is the-
underground
is
but
the-
not
is
under
the-
snow?
Is
That
the
would-
tip sticking out? Or like,
Yeah.
I don't know what
Very
that
odd
means.
because they say you can see it like from the air. There's definitely some kind of shape there.
So I put the coordinates into Google Earth, and it's just like, it looks like the side of a mountain.
Yeah. There's like a squarish kind of shape there, but it's not uniform and it doesn't look like a pyramid. So, and it is. It's weird how it's underground but not underground. And
I do believe that there's a ton of stuff that is just hidden from us.
but it's true that it could be like they mean like the Ice Age dumped a bunch of sediment and shit on top of it and buried it, because we do know that there's a lot of the pyramids around the world were dug up.
Yeah, but then they
all-
measure it. They were able to measure it, know the angles.
Yeah, and so with this one, it might have been something where it was buried in like sediment and underground and all that stuff, and the military dug it out, and that's why it was underground, but still, you know what I mean? Like they dug out the area around it.
So they had that guy on Joe Rogan. I don't know who it was, but he was talking about the Amazon. And he was saying the rainforest of the Amazon was all planted.
Yeah,
All of it.
yeah,
All of every single species of plant was planted. And it just got overgrown because of like the civilizations got conquered.
hmm
So like that's like a whole other thing too. Like,
It's
well,
like the
maybe
Petri dish thing I said. It's if you leave, something go, it's gonna, they're gonna get the survival of the fittest thing going, and whatever plant or organism is strong enough, it kills off whatever it needs to kill off. If it has competition, if it's not competition for it, lives cohesively.
I will say this: 100% of all the natural, crazy phenomenons that are like in American folklore, right? There's that hole that they could never get to the bottom of, Mel's hole or whatever.
Yeah,
All of those things, they're science fiction.
yeah,
Everything, all of it. The houses that have like, it feels like you're going downhill, but you're actually standing straight up. All that shit is complete science fiction. So, unfortunately, and I hate it, because I want to believe.
yeah. It sounds cool. I mean,
It sounds awesome that there's this pyramid in Alaska and it's fenced off, but maybe it's fenced off because they dropped a nuclear bomb there, and within that mile radius, you can't go there because you'll get cancer, and that's it's the Area 51 thing, right?
yeah. Then there's like, you could say too, like if aliens came down and built pyramids and they were these, whatever they used them for, doesn't even matter.
Mm-hmm.
That civilizations that came after that witnessed them would replicate them non-functionally. So
Yeah.
you could have pyramids all over the world, but doesn't mean that aliens came down and put pyramids all over the world. Even if that was the case originally, it would have been like, to me, it's
Why don't
more
we
like-
have a pyramid in our house? A
Yeah,
little
it's like-
pyramid.
Yeah.
That
It's more
powers
like
our
that,
house.
where you see it and you go, I'm going to build one of those over here.
Mhm.
And then it doesn't have the same function as the original one did, which was maybe power a spaceship. But this one looks like that one because they don't understand what it was.
But it is interesting that there's technologies out there,
Mm-hmm.
especially like way ahead of their time, and when they said that pyramid is believed to be rock, that's
Mhm.
weird. That's
Yeah.
weird because it's
there's
been proven. It's been
When they
proven.
talk about how things can't be done this had to be done with like a laser cut precision, and you talk about different stuff they found with
I don't believe
centers and
that
stuff.
so much,
Well,
but I
is it
do believe like the pyramids could have been a light source, because people have proven that you can, if you send electric current through a certain kind of stone, you can make it light up.
Well, I can say that I think that there's technique that gets involved in a lot of stuff that gets overlooked, where it doesn't have to be an advanced technology that made it happen. It could just be really good technique.
Okay, Mario.
Yeah.
Your father-in-law, he does signs.
Yeah.
What is neon?
It's a gas inside of a tube with an electric current. And the
See.
different gas makes different colors.
See.
Yeah.
It's just all that is. That is very, honestly, that is very simple technology.
Yeah.
Now, you have to have advanced knowledge of gas, right,
Mhm.
Mar?
Yeah, it's like argon. There's different the different gases that make the different colors.
But they have found pyramids that have literal lakes of mercury
Mhm.
underneath them. That is in Mexico. That is a big thing. There is mercury lakes underneath pyramids in Mexico.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man.
I don't know.
Is it
It's like I know, and being in a trade skill, you can be doing it for years, and then somebody will do something
Absolutely.
so simple,
Absolutely.
and you're like, holy shit, you can just do that, and it never even dawned on you.
It happened to me. It happened to me the
And
other
I'm
day.
simplifying this, but that could go
No,
on
but
a grander
that
scale.
happened to me the other day. Absolutely. I'm not gonna bore you with the details, but this guy was like, "Why do you do it like that? Why don't you do it like this?" And he showed me, and I'm
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
that's what that is marked on the. It's marked. It's
Yeah.
marked on your saw.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
"Why don't you just do it like this? It's literally marked right here. Just do it like this. It's a cleaner cut. It's
Right.
And I'm like, God damn it! I'm like,
Yeah,
you're a
it's
prophet.
the magician's trick where it's like, wait,
Yeah.
that's how you fucking did it? That's so stupid,
But it works.
because it's so easy, or it's so like. So I think there's like we don't give our past civilizations enough credit.
I agree with
in
that.
that department. We do it a
Absolutely.
lot. We
Like
downplay it.
we're
like this.
here. Like it's crazy because we're here.
I think if you took somebody from the past and you brought them to the future and you put them into school, do you think they're going to be like, I can't grasp this? Or would you think they would be like, okay, eventually they'd be like, this makes sense?
Absolutely.
So it's not like they were stupid,
Absolutely.
So
Well, so you and I we have the advantage, I think, in the workforce where we were old school and we were new school, right? So we were old school in the fact that like every job we had before 2000, right? You had to have common sense. You had to be able to do like real math, right?
yeah.
And then you get into new school, and we actually grew up with that. And like when I flip through like Instagram or whatever, and they're like, I made money I made $100,000 doing this. I'm like, flip it. I know it's a scam. The second somebody says I made money doing X, I'm like, oh, they're scamming me. They're trying to get me to buy into their system, right? I already know that. But like, I feel like, and I'm not trying to offend you, Mario, but like, Mario's a bit younger than us. So I feel like those people, and not Mario, because Mario's smart. He's
those people. What do you mean, those people?
Those people. I mean those people. I feel like they're like, well, maybe there's something to this, and there isn't. And I told Stephanie I wanted to write a book called The Whole World's Pitch, right? Because it is. The whole entire thing, and that was the most disappointing thing, was that when I became an adult, what I realized was the whole world's a pitch, dude. It's just somebody trying to fucking sell you something. And we get to this. I think you're right, dude. If it's real, why don't we know about it? Why is it not on CNN and Fox News?
Yeah.
So like, and then the fucking pessimist side of me is like, okay, if it is on CNN and Fox News, then why the fuck are they doing that? Are they trying to fuck
why
me?
Why wouldn't America want to boast that they have the largest pyramid?
Right, at the power source, that fun, like.
Geez, even if it was just a dead archaeological find,
Right?
you're like, largest, pyramid found in the United States.
So I think we're doubtful.
Sit down, Egypt, or whatever. They're not even the largest, but they're the most popular. So
yeah, but this one was supposed to be bigger.
It's way bigger.
And it's
I already was doing it. I was already doing it. Ours is bigger.
Allegedly.
USA.
USA. Yeah. America.
All right, so we're doubtful.
Doubtful.
All right, we're good. I'm good with doubtful. I'm good with doubtful because there's not enough on it.
Yeah.
Everybody's literally, when you said let's revisit this, I said absolutely, because I've seen a bunch of stuff since we did the thing.
Yeah.
I said, fuck yeah, that's a great idea. Let's revisit it. And then when I started revisiting it, I'm like, oh, it's the same fucking argument.
It's recycled stuff.
It's just somebody took a story and like now there's a new guy with the story, but at the end of the day, the story doesn't do anything.
Yeah, doesn't answer it.
All right. So we are doubtful that there is a dark pyramid in Alaska that has enough power to power the entire country. And it is a shell station for UFOs. I'm Anthony.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Mario.
And this is Everything That's Weird. For show notes and merchandise, go to www.everythingthat'sweird.com. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And be sure to like, subscribe, and review anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to contribute, please go to our Patreon page at Everything That's Weird. Check us out on Instagram at Everything That's Weird or Twitter at ETWPod, or if you'd like to send us an old-fashioned email, go to everythingthat'sweird@gmail.com.